Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Force Secure webinar with Network Rail and our cyber defense. Today, we're going to focus on how we work together to secure critical data and reduce the delays on the UK's rail network. Firstly, some introductions. I'm Alex. I'm the head of Force Secure commercial team, looking after critical national infrastructure. Joining me is Daniel Rozday, a senior asset manager to Network Rail, who'll be sharing his experiences. Christina Detweiler, product marketing manager for our cyber defense, who'll be asking the questions, and Ben Jennings, our OT and critical national infrastructure lead engineer, who work with Network Rail to deliver the solution. I'd also like to just take the opportunity, and this is really short, just to introduce Force Secure for those of you who have yet to meet us. Force Secure are over 20 years old and have been delivering thousands of our diode solutions across Europe in that time. From governments to military to intelligence communities, OT networks, critical national infrastructures, things like energy, which is nuclear, oil, gas, fossil and renewables, utilities, national grids, distribution networks, turbines, airports, ports, and of course, rail networks. We provide a targeted range of solutions from our diodes to trusted filter for increased security and capability, and services that protect critical systems. We are one of the leading authorities in deployment of diodes and flanking systems. Now, onto our webinar. I'm now going to hand over to Christina, who's going to kick off our conversation this afternoon. If you have any questions as we go along, please can I ask you to put those in the chat, as for some reason, it does take a few seconds for that to come through. So as you think of them, please put them in the chat, and then we'll have a list ready at the end. And I look forward to speaking to you then. Christina, over to you.
Thanks, Alex. Very happy to be here. So as mentioned, I work for our cyber defense. We've been around for a little bit more than 25 years, and during that time, singularly focused on secure data transfer solutions. So be it through our diodes or cross-domain solutions, we work with our strategic partners like Force Secure to not only fortify those really critical networks, so your OT, your high sides in government, but also be able to monitor and work within them safely. We continue to innovate, and meet our customers' needs, as we know the threat landscape is constantly evolving. And speaking of customers, we have the privilege today to be joined by one, and that is, as Alex mentioned, Daniel Rozday from Network Rail. So Daniel, thank you again for your willingness to be here and share your experiences. I wanted to give you the floor to kind of give us a bit of background on Network Rail, your role there, kind of your mission, and some of the pain points or challenges that you were realizing that finally led you to, accepting that call from a vendor wanting to reach out to solve some of your challenges.
Yeah, I'm Daniel. I work on the East Coast Main Line, which takes you from London up through to the Scottish border. We also have a number of commuter lines, and these lines are all electrified, and it's the electrification where I work. So we have around 100 sites stretched out between London and the Scottish border, and then we have another sort of 10 or 20 here or there in various commuter networks, whether they're in Leeds or Sunderland or elsewhere across the country. These networks, they carry millions of passengers, millions of tons of freight, like it says there. We've got a number of ports on our system. We carry coking coal, we carry intermodal, you name it. It travels over the East Coast Main Line each week. And we also have a number of maintenance groups. So I work in the asset management team, but we have 4 maintenance depots with maintenance technicians, and they respond to incidents on the line. They respond to, we call them trips. So when you get a number of breakers or something happening in the substation, they have to respond to that promptly so that service is kept in an acceptable and reliable way.
So Daniel, can you tell us a little bit more? We've got your background, kind of what was Network Rail experiencing? Why did you guys even, consider reaching out to a Force Secure? What were you going through?
I do apologise. We may seem to be having connection issues. Daniel, can you hear us?
I can hear you just now. It is my Bluetooth headset. I know what it has done, so I'm back now, and I will know what to do next time. I really do apologize for that. It's been working beautifully for the last 20 minutes, and then right when I ask the question, off it goes.
Okay. Well,
Try me.
the question was, so what did you do? So what were the challenges you found, and why did you approach Al and
Absolutely
Foursquare?
right. Yeah, so it's been over 15 years or so that we've been able to get data back remotely from those sites to the maintenance technicians that I mentioned earlier, and we've had a system that's worked, done us proud that for that amount of time. But one of Network Rail's main aims at the moment is to do more remotely, to have fewer boots on ballast, to have fewer people visiting sites, and we also had obsolescence concerns with our existing system. So if I say that it was more in sort of baud rate rather than megabits, and we're looking at things like video, we're looking at more data all the time. So we knew that we had to get something that was more fit for purpose for what our maintenance organization and asset management organizations needed.
Thanks, Daniel. So I think, Alex, if we want to go to the next slide, we see our before picture. So before we move on, anything, got that next slide, architecture. There we go. So anything else, Daniel, Ben, to add from this perspective? And then I want to get to, there's a number of different technologies, different ways to solve this problem. So how did you guys land on the data diode being the best option?
I think the key thing, the big kind of challenge here, so we've got the architecture of the environment that we wanted to get, the network rail wanted to take data out of, which is that rail operation sensor network on the left of the diagram, and we've got the desired place for the data to go, which is a separate network on the IT side. And I think a key consideration at the start of this challenge is what is the threat that we're looking to protect against with the solution. And in this type of architecture, this type of scenario, as is the case kind of across critical infrastructure, it's all about stopping a threat actor from being able to gain access to that critical operational network where those cyber physical systems are. So all of our decision making from here on out was to look for solutions that would give the highest possible assurance that there was no way a threat actor could traverse from that IT environment, from an internet environment, down to that OT environment where those critical systems are.
And for us, simplicity was absolutely key. So it was really important that we didn't start to come up with something that was completely unmanageable and far too large. Yeah, the system that had worked so well for us over the years, keeping those cyber threats at bay, was quite simple. We saw some very full-featured but quite complex systems, and this one was a bit more on the simple side, or just the easy to understand side, let me say.
So I think if we flick to the next slide, then it kind of shows us how a data diode works. So Ben, any other color to add here in terms of what we're seeing, how we can ensure that the data is not routable back to those critical networks?
Yeah, absolutely. So the choice in question here was a solution that would contain hardware and software, and of course the engineering effort as well. But centered to this solution was a data diode. For those of you that don't know, a data diode is a network appliance that allows data to flow in one direction between two networks. Now we've got a little picture of it on screen there at the bottom. So from the outside, it looks very much like a normal network appliance, a bit like a switch, 1U half depth in the case of most use cases. However, inside that box is a very different appliance to traditional networking technologies. So the architecture diagram that we've got above there shows the systems within inside the data diode. And the key thing to understand here is that within the data diode, there are two completely separate systems. So they have separate compute, they have separate power, they have separate storage. One of those systems connects to the OT network where the data is being generated, and the other connects to the IT or cloud or other less secure network where that data needs to go to. And the only thing that connects those two things together is a optical fiber cable, and on one side of it is technology that is only capable of sending light, and on the other side is technology that's only capable of receiving light. So each of those systems connects to the OT and the IT network, and then data can only move across that optical fiber in one direction. And what that means is that it's against the laws of physics for data to move from right to left, as we look at the diagram there, from that IT to that OT environment. We've also got an intelligent data diode here, and what that means is a couple of things. The compute is in the data diode itself, so it's a one-box solution, but also it means that as the data moves across, the network packets are deconstructed, reconstructed. Now, in the simplest form, what that means is that data that's normally attached to network packets, things like MAC addresses and IP headers, that would contain sensitive information about that OT network where we're taking data out of, that all gets stripped and deconstructed as it gets sent across the network boundary, and then a new network packet is created on the other side. So we had the data diode as the solution here to connect to those networks and move that data one way across that network boundary from the OT to the IT side. But it wasn't just hardware to make this solution work, because in this case, the data that needed to be exported was in the form of files, and those files are generated on a system on the OT side. And the challenge that we've then got is how we upload those files to the data diode. So that's where the software comes in, and the software is key in order to do that protocol handling and allow that data to move to and from the data diode. So there is a piece of software that gets installed onto the system where those log files were generated. That piece of software collects those files, sends them to the data diode, which performs various security checks on those files before moving them across the network boundary, across that one-way optical fiber cable, no return path at that point. And then the data diode connects out to a system on Network Rail's IT side that receives those files, where there is then a final software component that receives that incoming connection from the data diode and writes those files and folders to the directory where they need to go. So it's a combination of hardware and software to allow that data to move across a one-way hardware enforced piece of technology, the OWL Cyber Defense Data Diode.
Got it. And so here we see kind of the after and with this solution implemented. So Daniel, I want to turn it back to you. So what did you learn throughout this process? What were some of, I feel we probably have a lot of people on the phone who are in a similar, they're experiencing these challenges. They're trying to figure out a good solution here. So any best practices, lessons learned, anything else you want to add in terms of, not only going through the process with ForSecure and OWL, but the outcomes and what you've been able to realize as a result of this solution?
Well, one thing we certainly learned, Christina, was to listen to the experts. We thought we had a pretty clear idea of what we wanted, what data pipeline we had in mind, and how to get things from A to B. But it took Ben to steer us a little bit and to just clarify our thinking about what was really important to us with the data, whether it was important for things to get as quickly as possible from A to B, or whether it was more important that we didn't lose anything, even if it moved a little slower, a little more carefully, that if we had system updates that needed to be applied on either side, that we weren't going to lose any of there wasn't going to be gaps in the data that we had. So that's probably the very first thing I kind of learned. Speaking more personally, something I learned is that when you're dealing with a system as secure as this, make sure that once you've finished your work, make sure first that it's not past 5 o'clock on a Friday, and second that you've got an hour or so just to be in the area around, just in case you have done anything that might cause the system to think that you were corrupting it or a cyber threat yourself, and you'd forgotten to update everything that you needed to make sure everything's in a healthy state. I had that happen to me twice early on. So now I have a crib sheet that tells me exactly what order to do things, when to do them, and I always make sure to give it at least half hour after the work's finished, just to make sure everything is settled and content. It was a bit of a learning curve for me, being used to a system that's that obsessed about making sure it's got its integrity in the right place. So those are the two big things for me. But I had help from Ben all the way, which was great.
And absolutely, as you said there, initially we had a architecture that was designed to be as performant as possible, but we encountered a challenge that we often have with these use cases, which is the IT side goes through regular updates. We have things like Patch Tuesday, where systems update, they need to restart overnight. So what we did is we changed the system design to accommodate the ability for the IT side to go down while it does its updates, but the files would be stored on the data diode until it could heartbeat to that final system, and at that point the files would be sent. So even in the event that the server on the IT side that was receiving the files was down for an hour or so, as soon as it came back up, it would receive the data from the last hour.
I think that's really helpful, because I know, this looks super complicated. We've got a lot going on here, but I think to talk through that and, let folks know that it does take some solutioning to get to this point, but I think the end is worth it. So I do want to get to the good news. So now we have this, threats mitigated. We've got our architecture set up. So Daniel, can you walk us through for kind of your day to day in terms of the management, what time savings you're seeing, what I don't want to spill the good news, but what are you seeing in terms of how it's helped your team, your customers, and your security architecture?
So yeah, I mentioned back at the start, didn't I? We've got these maintenance groups up and down, and that what they respond to is a lot of the time is trips of the overhead line, and trips means trains stopping and passengers who are delayed. So what this system allows us to do, and what it allows us to do even better than what it was before the dial was in place, is to respond promptly to events, really promptly. Before we put the diode in, we got information out to our maintenance within a half hour or so. But here we have on the screen something which happened shortly after we put the diode on last year. And there's the timeline. It's 8:41 in the morning, so just about rush hour. Everybody's very keen to make their 9:30, 10 o'clock meetings. And unfortunately, an insulator has just failed. That's a pretty hefty, 10 kilogram kind of thing that could cause some damage if it fails. And that's just failed on the East Coast main line. That's failed in a section of around 15 kilometers long. So it's a little bit needle in a haystack to go and find that if you're just told the section that it's in. But at 8:42, the maintainer isn't just told, go look in that 15-kilometer section. They're told exactly what's happened, what breakers have opened, how far the fault is away, what zone that went on. And what that allows is for them to very quickly sit down, make a plan, get the right people to the right place so that they can get the trains moving again. And that's now happening, I say, 29 minutes sooner than it was, or around that sort of time frame. So that's about how quick we get the data, but it's not just how quick we get the information now, it's also how much we get, because it was a real step up for us. As asset managers in particular, I don't really work on the every second kind of time basis. I'm more about the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and I generally want to collect as much information as I can about absolutely everything. So something that we've been able to monitor now that we've never had before is temperature from all of our substations. Temperature is really important for switchgear. If it gets too humid, if it gets too cool, we want to know about it. We want to check that the heaters are working. We do that on a kind of 3-monthly basis with physical visits, or we did it one time, but now we've got it right there whenever you want it. You can trend it for the last, however many years, and that's going to help us. That's going to help us make decisions about what kit to replace first, where we should be putting dehumidifiers in, how we should be caring for our asset to get the longest life out of it. And then I think it's on the next slide that we have a little picture of the temperature, but then also a bit of a picture of some voltage. And that's Yeah, there we go. So there on my left, the black background screen, that's the temperature. As you can see, it's quite well regulated. The middle there is about 12 degrees, which is nice. So we can see any excursions above and be underneath 12, um, and try and figure out what was going on there, who'd left the door open, that sort of thing. Um, and that's through the winter time. Anyhow, I won't get into the detail too much of what we're exactly seeing, only to say it's more than we had before, and it's good. Um, and on the right side, that's voltage. And what's happening there is because we have a high resolution of data, we're able to see behavior that we would have missed before that was too quick. And in this particular chart, we're able to see a tap changer. It's not actually on our system, it's elsewhere, but we were able to see where that's working and how it's working. And that, again, helps us understand as the grid changes, as things move in the direction that we expect, whether we need to take action, whether we need to talk to people, how we should respond. So data quicker and more of it. And then actually a final bonus, something we hadn't planned on doing, but are really glad that we're able to do now. And that is we figured out that the diode could take files of up to 2 gigabytes. And so we decided to test that. It took me a little bit of figuring out to actually get them through, but we got there. And we were able to actually take backups through the diode of a few key devices that are able to create a chunk of backup into 2 gig slices. And so now every few weeks we get 30, 40 gigabytes through. And it was a pleasant surprise to see that when that is happening, it doesn't actually delay the more up-to-date, those trips that I mentioned before. Those small files sneak right through, and then the big files just come through when nothing else is going on. So that was a bit of a bonus. That wasn't something we'd ever planned on doing, but that's now going to help us if we do have a catastrophic failure, a fire, or we do have a cyber incident. We'll now have we'll know exactly when the last backup was taken in a more automated fashion than what it was before.
Well, that is awesome. We love to hear a happy customer. And I know at Al, we are focusing on those higher speeds, and we're seeing more and more use cases for that to, kind of up the ante and how fast you can get that data transferred. So I'm glad to hear it's an added bonus for you guys as well. Okay, so I think, and it sounds like, not only your teams, but also the passengers, that experience was improved. I have not been to the UK, but you guys shared with me that the trains and the public transportation, it can be a little dicey in terms of making, like you said, those meetings on time. So that sounds awesome that, the passengers were able to realize and hopefully see that impact as well. Okay, I think, Ben, anything else to add from the ForSecure side in terms of, outcomes or maybe across the board with other customers, some of the other benefits that the diodes have allowed?
Yeah, absolutely. So the scenario Daniel's described there, with initially sending the data that the diode was chosen to do, but then actually looking at what else it could do, that's very common. Once there's sort of people use this technology and people get confident with it, they realize all the value that could be unlocked from getting other different data types out of that OT network as well. So yes, backups of other critical systems in Daniel's case, but also other logging information from things like network appliances, so things like syslog, and any other data that could be originating, depending on what else is in that environment. But also flipping that the other way around, we also see great appetite for people wanting to get data into OT environments. Generally, that's patches and updates. So having a separate diode, separate inbound feed to be able to get patches and updates into these environments, instead of having manual processes with USB sticks and scanners, very sort of time-consuming, quite laborious processes to get those updates in that are inherently vulnerable to human error. The data diode can also be used to get data into those environments. So I think that's sort of a very typical scenario as people, as this technology becomes more and more, people become more confident in it. The other thing I think would be good to touch on briefly is just the kind of comparison between the data diode technology and other options that Network Rail had and that other organizations have in these kind of use cases. And the common comparison technology is something like a firewall. So firewalls have historically been used very, very broadly across operational technology and critical infrastructure. And I think it's just really key to understand those differences between something like a firewall and the data diode that we went for here with Network Rail. And that difference is that a firewall or other means such as VLANs or access control lists, or those security terminologies that we hear, they are software defined solutions. So by definition, something that is software defined is both susceptible to human error and can be hacked. Whereas what the data diode does is, being a hardware enforced technology, it doesn't matter what somebody does to it, or even if the components were to fail in some sense inside it, it always remains against the laws of physics for data to move in the wrong direction. So from a point of view of getting more assurance around the piece of technology and getting stakeholders on board with it, having something that you can concretely say is enforced in hardware can be really, really powerful.
Got it. And I think you said it earlier, it's that law of physics being, you have, like you said, that reliability, that redundancy, there's no chance of it going back. So I'm glad you pointed that out, because that is something that we hear a lot. We know we're kind of in the same space as firewalls. So thank you for calling that out. Okay, I think we're at the point, unless there's anything else to add, Daniel, from your perspective, just, again, you've got probably some peers on the call, anything else about this solution, or else we can move to our questions. We did have a few roll in, making good time.
Oh, let's give the folk a chance to ask some questions, Christina. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. So as Alex mentioned, keep these coming. Whatever we can't get to in this time, we will follow up. We've got the emails of who's submitting these, so we can definitely follow up. But first one for Daniel and Ben, feel free to plug in, and Alex as needed. Why did you choose OWL? So we know there's a lot of vendors in this space. So what were some of the deciding factors for OWL and for Secure, since you work most closely with them?
Thanks, Christina. Yeah, we did look around. You mentioned firewalls. You mentioned other suppliers, and we particularly looked at people who met industry criteria, different criteria, and look for sort of peer industries, look for places where these diodes have been used that were probably in need of even more security than us. I think you've done a lot in the area of defense, and you've got some certifications there. But probably the most compelling thing for me when we were looking at the solution was the simplicity of administering and setting it up. You use an operating system that I'm familiar with. There's a logical process through it, and it was something that my part of the company could run, could manage, could set up, and could operate, and it met our needs. It wasn't. I know you had different products, and we use the kind of the entry level one, the OPDS 1000, but that was something that fit what we needed and didn't provide lots of stuff that we might want one day, but don't need right now.
Got it. Thank you. Ben, Alex, anything else to add from your perspectives working with kind of customers across the board about the OWL? We have our new Talon suite, but also with the OPDSs. Anything else to add from that perspective?
From as a kind of with my engineer hat on, it's a very robust, proven solution. So mean time before failure is in excess of 12 years with the particular product that Daniel has. It's something that Secure have been deploying OWL diodes for well over 10 years now, in fact, over 15 years. So for us, it's a trusted and proven technology. You mentioned defense. Yes, these are not just deployed in rail, they're widely deployed throughout defense and critical national infrastructure. So from an engineering point of view, it's a very robust, proven solution. And it has software components that sit either side of it to collect the data from each system, but fundamentally the diode is a one-box solution in a really nice form factor that is comparable size to a switch, and with a fairly short amount of training. End users can be trained in order to administer these themselves. So the usability is really important for us, as well as the robustness.
Got it. Well, thank you. Daniel, back to you. So you talked a little bit about some of the added bonuses or the additional value that you've realized with the diode. What is next what can you tell us about what's next, at least for your cybersecurity strategy? How does the solution fit into that vision? Where else do you see kind of those opportunities to leverage the diode or your solution?
I talked already, didn't I, about how we're looking at removing boots from ballast is the phrase that we use, get fewer people on track. And what that means is more remote information in all its forms. So I suppose a obvious next thing would be either still images of equipment at a regular basis, or even live video to confirm things like, vegetation, just see if it's a thermal image, maybe whether we have any concerns about heating. Also, richer monitoring, if that's the right way to, away from the basics of just user accounts and privileges and that sort of thing, but just trying to collect everything together to build a kind of heuristic, to build an idea, get an idea of what your network should look like, and then sense any kind of changes or any kind of differences. So I think more data more quickly is what's next.
And that's a really important thing there as well, is it's not just logging information that the diodes can send. It's not just files. It's video as well, and it's multiple concurrent streams. So it could be multiple video feeds out for secure CCTV monitoring, as well as the different types of industrial control system protocols that exist, the likes of Modbus, OPC, MQTT. All of those are protocols that can be supported over this appliance. It's quite a common misconception, because people think, well, how can a two-way protocol work over a box that can only send in one direction? And the answer to that is it's all in the software. So there is intelligent proxies that run on these boxes. They emulate the required signals, requests and responses, in order to allow those more complex two-way protocols to work in one direction.
And actually, you've just answered one of our questions from the audience as well, without realizing, Ben. Daniel, not you, Daniel, from Network Rail, but Daniel, we're answering your question, which was, I understand the OWL has capability to handle some live TCP data streams. How does bidirectional TCP work with the OWL? Is this with proxies and software on the sending device, which is essentially what you just answered there, isn't it, Ben?
Yeah, exactly. And just kind of getting slightly more specific on TCP. So TCP uses a three-way SYN-ACK handshake. So the diode has a reverse proxy, technically, which sends out that fake SYN-ACK handshake in order to satisfy the system that's sending the data and allow the data to flow. And that's the case when we've got file transfer, as is the case with Network Rail. There is TCP going all the way through, using those emulations in the software.
Okay. Well, I think we need to kind of wrap up. We've gone over a little bit. Obviously, if you have any more questions, please pass them through. We're happy to come back to you. This will be recorded. This has been recorded, sorry, and we will send you, or a copy will be made available for you. And if you need to give us a chat, just send us an email at inquiries@4-secure.com. Any questions, please come back to us, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. And Daniel, Ben and Christina, thank you ever so much for your time spent doing this. Thank you.
Thanks for having
Goodbye,
us.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Alex.
Goodbye.